one of the things that struck me about Alexander Solzhenitsyn's commencement speech at Harvard in the mid-'80s is a sentence he said back then, which is that he perceives that the West is losing courage, or that courage is diminishing in the Western world. And I think we're 40 years after that speech, and it's absolutely true. I think we're losing our courage. We're losing our manhood. We are continuously evolving into a narrative of cowardice. To paraphrase J. Cole's Middle Child, one of the lyrics there where he says, "I don't speak the language of cowards." We don't have people like that. We're losing those people, particularly the so-called leaders. So our leadership positions, whether it's in politics or in business or in investing, the people that control the capital, the people that control the means of production are cowards. And that is very bad. That is the beginning of the end, as Solzhenitsyn says. I want to talk about this in several ways. First, I want to acknowledge it. I want to also connect it to the current election, which I believe is exactly the election between courage and cowardice. Courage being epitomized by Donald Trump, and cowardice by the establishment, which picked Kamala Harris. I don't even want to pick on her. She really is just a puppet here representing the apparatus. We have the same thing in Europe, Germany or France or England. The big powers of Europe are run politically by cowards. Their businesses are run by cowards. I'm going to use some example. And then finally, I also want to finish with the arts, actually. The arts is always a good mirror of society, and we lack courage in the arts too. What I mean with courage in the arts is something like Les Demoiselles d'Avignon by Picasso, a painting that shocked the world, or something like the Beatles, or something like house music in Chicago, which comes out of really totally fringe gay club called the Warehouse in Chicago, and becomes a world phenomena that is still going on today with raves and thousands of people and Ibiza and all that. So we have this type of courage now. I am 100% convinced it's still there. We have it. We have it in business with people like Elon Musk, Jensen Huang, even Jeff Bezos, if you want to go one generation before them. But we're kind of losing that a little bit. Y Combinator is a good example, or people like Vinod Khosla and others in Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley, which used to be an incubator for courage, is turning into this language of cowards, conformity. Now people, understand very well how to profiteer from this. Like let's say, Y Combinator is, in my opinion, a profiteering organization that just profiteers for insiders, but doesn't really nurture the kind of entrepreneur that shows courage, that is out there really changing the world to the better by delivering something which gets better and lower cost and better all the time. Again, I'm going to start with the general statement. We're losing the courage. I'm going to tie it to the business world and then to the art world. This is not even on podcast. It's September 4, 2024. This is Cryptelco. Since the last update, we are down 2%. The market is down 1%. For the year, we're up 4%. The market's up 18%. We're outperforming by 14%. So in Alexander Solzhenitsyn's commencement speech at Harvard, it's in the mid-'80s, I think 1984, links in the show notes. He talks about an observation that the West is losing courage. And I want to tie this right to today, because what he saw 40 years ago really materialized. I think Solzhenitsyn, in my opinion, is the most emphatic observer of human nature I have ever come across. I've started reading his book, The Gulag Archipelago, book one, and I couldn't continue reading. It gave me. This is the only book that I read that gave me nightmares. He is so good at depicting the human condition that it's scary. He's so good at depicting the truth that it's scary. There's one passage in the book that I will never forget. He says, I was captured by the Nazis. They tortured me because they were looking for the truth. And then I was captured by the communists, and they tortured me, but they did not care about the truth anymore. And that is the scariest thing that I've ever heard, ever being uttered by anybody who has been incarcerated, has been exposed to when human nature goes awry. And I want to use this as a segue into that's what happens when we lose courage. We become conformists. We become polarized. Why is our society polarized? Think about it. Why are we so polarized? Well, it's because nobody has the courage to stand up. You can stand up. You can say, I'm happy to help, to help underprivileged people living in the ghettos of American cities. But I also don't want to have confiscatory taxing. I am against borderless, total borderless immigration. I am for controlled immigration because I don't want the tragedy of the commons to kill everything. You can say that I'm happy to pay taxes for a government that delivers, but I'm against the government that is confiscatory and profiteering. You can say I'm a pro Silicon Valley entrepreneur, but I'm against Y Combinator, which is a profiteering organization. You can have all these. You can say that I am. I think Israel has the right to exist, but I'm against Israel being treated as a Western country because it's predicated on religion, and that's not Western. That's not a Western value. So you can have these opinions, but nobody has them. You're either here or there. You're right or wrong, or right or left. That's why we are so polarized, and that is very, very bad for our politics. So this would be the first thing I wanted to say. Now, the purpose of this podcast is to give people a sense for what it feels like to run a hedge fund. So why are we talking about courage? I think I've stated it many times before. We take inspiration from every possible avenue of knowledge, whether it's science, whether it's books, a speech from, in my opinion, one of the most important literary persons of the 20th century, Alexander Solzhenitsyn. So we take inspiration from everywhere, and hopefully we can learn because we're Popperian when it comes to epistemology. We believe that we can always replace our ideas with better ideas. That we are, strong proponents of verisimilitude, which means that there is no truth, but there is always the approximation of truth. We can get closer to the truth. So we are not throwing truth overboard like the French postmodernists and wokeism today. We're not gaslighting ourselves at all. We believe we can approach the truth, but we can only approach it with courage. So this would be the first thing I wanted to say. Now, let's talk about business. I think we have the same problem in business. We have cowards everywhere. Let me just pick a few examples. One would be the German car industry. Years and years ago, we as investors were involved in German car industry. Actually, we were thinking of even investing in them because we saw the transformation of the internal combustion engine to the electric car. And then we, one interview after another, whether it's with IRs or with CFOs or CEOs, we noticed that they're just all cowards. They're all only interested in a couple of years of manager salaries, and then they run away. And in my opinion, that is a very bad thing for the German car industry and Germany as a whole. Another example closer to home would be Starbucks. Starbucks was not founded by Howard Schultz, but definitely grown by Howard Schultz. And to me, he's a person that epitomizes courage. He is in the league of Elon Musk, of Bezos, of you name it, Jensen Huang. He's only built a coffee empire. It doesn't really matter. I'm not, comparing them in terms of impact. Clearly, Jensen or Musk have bigger impact on the world, but still, as humans, he's as inspiring as them because he had the courage. He had the courage to stand up and say, this is what I want to do. I'm going to invest large scale, long term, build the card, build the knowledge base, everything. Now, today, Starbucks is the exact opposite. In fact, they just fired their CEO a few weeks ago. They brought in the former CEO of Chipotle, so maybe they've realized. And I think this is the sign that there is still the spirit of Howard Schultz existing there. because the former CEO, the one who just got fired, some guy who came from Reckitt Benckiser, and completely different, coward, hides behind floskels of words, nomenclature, bullshit. Excuse my French. And the company was not going anywhere. I think there's a lot of S&P 500 companies like that. Walt Disney is the kind of company founded by an incredibly courageous person, by Walt Disney, and now run by political ideologues, complete nonsense businessmen. If you ask me, it's not just that they don't have courage; they just don't know what they're doing. The stock is reflecting that. I could go on, but I think in business, as an investor, now I want to tie this now a little bit to the hedge fund business. When you look for returns, you have to have courage. People like Hugh Henry, you can like him or not like him. You need to be able to step out and say what you think, and then put your worth where your mouth is. Put your money where your mouth is. Excuse me. This is what wealth creation actually means. And for anybody who's listening, and this is not investment advice at all, because I'm not telling you where to invest, which stock to buy or sell. You better have courage. You better learn how to exhibit courage. Otherwise, you have no business being a hedge fund manager. You can be a wealth manager. You can be in the investment business, which is the Wall Street version of clipping coupons, making a few percent here and there, usually not adding any value whatsoever. But if you really want to create wealth, you have to have courage. You have to stick with your guns. You have to be very concentrated. You can't be diversified. We have 3 positions. We have Tesla, we have Nvidia, and we have Bitcoin. Those are 3 different positions. Again, this is not investment advice. Please do your own work. And I'm not going to discuss those investments because that's not the topic of this. By the way, we have a very small position in Bitcoin, so I wouldn't even call this a position, but we do have a position. And a position is a position. It means that you have a stake in it, that you have an opinion about this, and you better have an opinion, by the way, which is another sign of pseudo wealth creators that are really just investors, but disguise themselves as wealth creators who have lots of positions. Lots of Silicon Valleys like that. Here's my short critique on Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley, in my opinion, was the incubator of courage, all the way back to the Notorious 8, who started their own business called Intel back then in the 50s. That was a huge deal for not wealthy engineers to go on their own and start a business. Of course, they were funded by somebody from Texas. Texas, which in my opinion is the state that still encompasses courage. That's what we need. We need courage. Now, I'm going to call this manhood, and I think it's the wrong word because I think there are females that can exhibit courage as much as men can. My partner Zobinar is that kind of person. So I don't want to call it manhood, but there's no better word right now for this. It is because men have, in general, always carried the torch of courage. Not always. And there's plenty of opportunities to come across in history where women have been also incredibly courageous, whether it's, Jeanne d'Arc, whether it's, the feminist movement in the end of the 19th century, Camille Claudel, she was really a courageous artist that was associated with Rodin. There's plenty of opportunity to find women, and they're much more prevalent today, but they're as rare as men. So maybe the word manhood is wrong. Maybe we should call it courage. We should just call it courage and just end with it. Now that having said, I still think that we are at risk by destroying manhood. We're taking away the role model that both men and women have for behavior. This person, the hero, the guy who stands up and fights for his convictions, we still need that. And it cannot be disguised as some sort of gender neutral thing because then it's gonna fall into the woke ideology and that is the exact opposite. It's the epitome of cowardice, because wokeness is generalizing suffering. It's generalizing everything. It's talking about experiences that people that actually are proponents of wokeism never share, whether it's poverty, whether it's suffering, whether it's whatever, they don't share those experiences. The people that actually promote wokeism, those are the elites that don't share those. So I think we need courage, we need manhood, we need the man to stand up and fight for his convictions. Again, this avenue is open for both genders, but it needs to be epitomized by manhood, because that also gives the inspiration for the female part of this equation to follow in the footsteps. And maybe there can be a female version of that. I'm open for that. There are certain signs of that, whether it's in the arts. We have Miley Cyrus, in my opinion, is a singer that has a very courageous female, sensibility for music, as opposed to Taylor Swift. It's of course the complete opposite, and it's just generalizing everything. It's not particular. It's not art. It's not anything for that matter. So no wonder Taylor Swift is so popular, because our zeitgeist is the zeitgeist of cowardice. It is the zeitgeist of castrated manhood, and we want to fight against that. We can't let that happen, because that's going to bring us down. It's going to bring it. So that's why the Roman Empire collapsed, because emperors like Caligula and whatever, and the court was all just perverts and totally demasculated individuals that couldn't run and then they were overrun by the barbarians, and also inflation played a little part there. Don't want to go into that either. It's too much of a conversation. So we need courage. Lastly, I want to talk a little bit about the arts. We can see that in the arts also. We have Les Demoiselles d'Avignon is, in my opinion, epitomizes courage in the arts. It's a painting by Picasso where he took a lot of risk to, at his reputation, risked his name, risked money to paint something which became a revolution in the art world. We have the house music in the 80s in Chicago and Detroit, the Beatles. We have grunge and hip hop, actually hip hop as a and rap and all these counterculture movements that today, of course, are just caricatures of themselves compared to back then. And we lack that a little bit. We don't have these intrinsic new art forms. They will come from somewhere, but we need courage first. Courage is a necessary. It's not enough to create good art, but it's absolutely necessary. So to summarize, we're in a zeitgeist of castrated manhood, no courage. The language of cowards is spoken everywhere, in politics, in business, in the arts, and we need to stop that. Thank you.